I probably should have pulled away. When my niece's hands reached the small of my back, slow, firm, and surprisingly gentle. But I didn't. I just sat there and let her continue. Then she asked, in a soft voice I can still hear in my head, "Do you want me to keep going, Uncle? You might think this is wrong, and maybe you're right, but if you've ever been so lonely that a single touch made your heart tremble, then maybe, just maybe, you'll understand why I couldn't say no. Stick around, because this story might feel a little too familiar. Subscribe now." These are real confessions that just might send a chill down your spine. It is often said that time has a way of mending even the deepest of scars. Yet, they never reveal how to navigate the silence that ensues. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Edward. At 60 years of age, I find myself residing in a quaint little house, nestled at the periphery of a tranquil town, where solitude has been my companion for the past few years. Prior to this, I immersed myself in woodworking, my hands perpetually engaged, my mind consistently attuned. In the wake of my wife's passing, I believed that by keeping my hands busy, I could somehow escape the clutches of my sorrow. Yet, grief does not unfold in such a manner. Silence envelopes the house now. Most days it feels eerily silent, a stillness that permeates your very being, particularly during those languid summer evenings, when the daylight lingers just a bit too long, and the nights echo with a profound emptiness. At times, I find myself on the porch, attuned to the whispers of the wind weaving through the trees, imagining it as her voice calling out to me. At times, I find myself completely tuning out. Not long ago, an unexpected call came my way. Lana, the niece of my late wife, at 24, brimming with vitality, ever inquisitive, and perpetually wide-eyed with wonder. It had been years since our paths last crossed, not since she had blossomed into a teenager. Yet there she was on the line, inquiring if she might grace me with her presence for a couple of weeks. "I simply must escape the city's grasp for a time," she remarked. "In a tranquil place." I agreed before fully contemplating the decision. I reassured myself that having some company would be a pleasant change. What I was unaware of was the profound impact that seemingly simple yes was destined to have on my life. As Lana emerged from the taxi and set foot on my porch, I found it hard to believe it was truly her. She had transformed from the slender teenager who once followed her mother at family barbecues. She stood tall now, radiating confidence, her grace understated yet profound. Her long auburn hair was gathered in a loose braid, and when she smiled, it lacked the giggly grin I once remembered. The warmth enveloped, a steady presence that had matured over time. "Uncle Ed," she said, and in that fleeting instant, the weight of time seemed to fold in on itself, encapsulating all the years in a single breath. I returned the smile. "You have transformed," I remarked. "Indeed you have," she responded softly, her gaze traversing the lines etched upon my weathered visage. Yet, there existed no judgment, merely an embrace of kindness. She adapted effortlessly, claiming the guest room as if it had been her own all along. She exhibited a tidy demeanor, showed respect, and willingly assisted with the dishes without needing to be prompted. On more than one occasion, I found her by the window in the soft morning light, her gaze distant, as if she were pondering something elusive, something just beyond her reach. One morning, as we sipped our coffee, she revealed to me her pursuit of studying massage therapy. "It assists individuals," she remarked with understated clarity. "The essence of touch holds immense power when it originates from a genuine source." I nodded, yet the manner in which she expressed it resonated within me, echoing long after our dialogue had concluded. Our days settled into a gentle cadence, soft meals shared, strolls to the creek, and casual conversations that gradually deepened into something more intimate. She inquired about my woodworking endeavors. I inquired about her school. There was absolutely nothing amiss, not even remotely. Yet, there were moments when I caught myself gazing at her for just a heartbeat longer than intended, observing how her voice softened as fatigue set in. She nestled into the couch, wrapped in a blanket, as if it were her rightful place. I reassured myself that it was merely affection, familial, innocent. Yet, beneath the surface, An unfamiliar sensation began to awaken. It frightened me more than I was willing to acknowledge. The afternoon had unfolded with a gentle warmth. I had dedicated several hours to the yard, meticulously trimming hedges and splitting logs, endeavors I stubbornly chose to undertake myself, despite my back having other intentions long ago. When I finally stepped back indoors, the perspiration on my shirt had evaporated, yet the familiar, dull ache in my lower back began to pulse with a persistent intensity. I crouched to loosen the laces of my boots, releasing a soft groan into the stillness. Not overly dramatic, just sufficient for Lana, who had been nestled on the couch with a book, to lift her gaze. "Are you all right, Uncle Ed?" she inquired, her tone tinged with worry. "Just getting old?" I murmured, rising gradually, my hand resting against my side. "The same old story." She placed the book down gently and rose to her feet. "I possess the ability to assist with that, you see." I gazed at her, a sense of confusion washing over me. "Assistance with what?" "Your back," she murmured, drawing nearer. "We have recently concluded a unit on lumbar release in class. Shall I give it a go?" For a moment, I paused, caught in the web of uncertainty. For a fleeting moment, there was something peculiar about the notion that lingered in the air. Yet, the tension in my spine spoke more forcefully than my sense of pride. "Of course, if you believe it could be beneficial." "Believe me," she said, her smile warm and inviting. "I require the opportunity to hone my skills." With a graceful motion, she indicated the armchair. I settled into my seat, a touch rigid, and inclined my body forward. I noticed her warming her hands, rubbing them together as if it were a familiar ritual. And then her fingers brushed against my skin. Initially, it was merely her palms resting on my shoulders. Soft, deliberate, yet it felt foreign. I made an effort to push it from my mind. It was merely a massage. Lana is simply being of assistance. Yet, within the stillness, an unspoken presence lingered. There was an uncanny precision in the way her fingertips traced the precise knots in my muscles, as if she possessed an innate understanding of my pain, anticipating it before I even recognized it myself. "Please tell me if anything feels off," she murmured gently. I chose not to respond, not due to any particular reason, but rather, for the first time in an age, it simply didn't. Lana's hands glided with an unexpected assurance, deliberate, skilled, as if she possessed an intimate understanding of the tension that resided within me. Her thumbs glided softly along my spine, pausing at the knots, then delicately working to release them. "Many individuals are unaware of the tension they carry in their backs," she remarked gently, her voice barely rising above a whisper. "We bear a greater weight than we realize." I inclined my head, uncertain if she was able to perceive the gesture. "Life constructs it," I remarked, "a single small step at a time." Her smile danced in the air behind me. I could sense it in the warmth of her voice. "Do share your thoughts." She toiled not merely in quietude. Her words flowed, and in that moment the weight of the world seemed to lift. She recounted her last year at school, describing the grueling nature of the exams and the way the city seemed to engulf her. "It feels as though everyone is rushing by," she remarked. "At times, I find myself yearning for the world to decelerate." I was intimately familiar with that sensation. "I find myself missing her," I uttered softly. Lana took a brief moment to pause. "Your wife?" I gave a slight nod. There are moments when I find myself expecting to hear her voice drifting from the kitchen, or catching a whiff of her perfume lingering on the pillow. I cleared my throat, a subtle prelude to the words that were about to unfold. Yet, it has been quite some time since that last occurred. For a moment, she remained silent, allowing her hands to continue their task. In a soft whisper, "I believe she would be pleased to know you're not by yourself at this moment." I found myself at a loss for words in response to that. Her fingers glided down, delving into the taut muscles just above my hips. Her fingers grazed the small of my back, where the skin tingled with heightened sensitivity, acutely aware of her touch. I tensed, if only slightly. She sensed it, yet she remained close. She gradually reduced her speed. I allowed her to continue on her path. I closed my eyes tightly, believing that by not witnessing it, I could somehow diminish its reality, yet it remained unchanged. It only served to enhance the clarity of it all. I reassured myself that this was still within the bounds of normalcy. I reminded myself that family stands by one another. I whispered to myself countless thoughts. Yet, the gentle heat of her hands, the stillness enveloping us, and the profound depth of her compassion. It was starting to thaw a part of me I believed had been encased in ice for ages. I found myself uncertain about whether I truly wished for it to come to an end. Lana's hands gradually came to a halt as they made contact with my lower back. Her thumbs danced in gentle circles at the delicate juncture of my spine and hips, lingering there with an intensity that felt new. She adjusted her stance, inching nearer. Her breath, soft and warm, brushed against the fabric of my shirt. Her voice fell to a whisper, as if she wished to keep it from traveling too far on the breeze. "This section is somewhat delicate," she remarked. "May I take a few more minutes to work on it?" I hesitated before responding. The words reached my ears. I grasped the significance, yet the distance that separated us abruptly took on a new significance. More substantial, more inviting, nearly delicate. I might have chosen to decline. I likely ought to have, yet I refrained. I offered the faintest nod. My eyes remained closed, my breath slightly unsteady. With that, she continued on her path. Silence enveloped the room. The stillness in the room shifted. The silence that enveloped them was far from the comfortable quiet shared by those who truly understood one another. The silence enveloped us, charged with an unspoken energy, where the weight of unexpressed thoughts resonated more profoundly than any words we might have dared to utter. Her hands glided with a measured grace, each movement intentional and thoughtful. Her fingers glided softly over the taut muscles of my lower back, thumbs tracing the contours of my waist with a delicate touch. Each touch seemed deliberate, yet there lingered an additional sensation, an essence of exploration. I found myself intensely conscious of each inhalation and exhalation, each subtle shift in weight. Each caress of her fingertips glided over my skin, a delicate whisper through the fabric of my shirt, and I understood profoundly that we had both ventured beyond a boundary, not by means of action, not at this moment, yet with consent, a silent presence. In that moment, a silent comprehension passed between us. Lana's hands glided downward, her fingers delicately following the contour of my hips, gradually making their way to the upper reaches of my thighs. Her movements were deliberate, each one steeped in a silence that seemed to weigh more than it had in the past. She moved with a deliberate grace, unhurried and poised. Silence enveloped her, and in that way it became all the more personal. My breath shifted, initially faint, then increasingly pronounced. I leaned forward just a bit, not out of discomfort, but because something within me was drawn to her. My chest constricted, not from agony, but from the peculiar pang of yearning for something I could not articulate. Her hands came to a halt. Then one moved softly upward, tracing my side, fingertips gliding over the delicate fabric of my shirt, toward the lower curve of my abdomen. She lingered for a moment, just enough for me to sense the heaviness of her caress. Then she moved, her palm grazing softly along the curve of my ribs. Instinctively, my hand found its way to hers. It was not an act of seizing. It lacked any sense of coercion. It was gentle, hesitant, like inquiring without uttering a sound. Yet she remained steadfast, not retreating. Her hand lingered beneath mine, fingers softening ever so slightly against my palm. It was a touch that transcended names and labels. It simply existed, resonating in the air between two individuals who had unwittingly edged a bit too near to a boundary they had never intended to breach. Her thumb shifted, almost imperceptibly. A subtle gesture, less an act of will than a reaction. My fingers glided over her knuckles, then retraced their path once more. Words remain elusive. No provisions were necessary. No kiss was exchanged. No audacious step. Yet, an unspoken connection lingered in the air between us. An experience that would linger in our memories forever. In that instant, the roles of uncle and niece faded away. We were not bound by the ties of family. We were merely two souls, excessively near, excessively silent, and acutely conscious of one another. The knock on the door resonated with the force of a thunderclap. It wasn't loud, but in the stillness we had cultivated, it might as well have been the crack of a gunshot. Lana flinched, retracting her hand with such suddenness that it nearly surprised me more than the knock that had echoed through the room. I slowly opened my eyes. The warmth had vanished, supplanted by an abrupt chill that coursed through the room like an unwelcome breeze. Silence enveloped us. We remained still. They simply gazed at one another, trapped in a fleeting instant that now seemed delicate and vulnerable. Yet another knock echoed through the stillness. This moment, accompanied by a voice. "Lana, are you home?" It was a young male, one I recognized well. She blinked, breaking free from her moment of stillness. "Just a moment," she called, her voice tinged with an unusual lilt. She rose swiftly, adjusting her shirt and running her fingers through her hair. I remained motionless in the chair, my palms buzzing with sensation, heart pounding as if I had just sprinted a marathon. As she swung the door wide, I instantly identified the guest standing before her, her cousin, Jake. He resided just a few streets away, a courteous young individual, consistently displaying kindness. "I'm just leaving this here," he remarked, extending a small box toward her. "Mother mentioned that it belongs to you." Lana inclined her head, a faint smile gracing her lips. "I appreciate it." With a casual wave, Jake took his leave. Lana eased the door shut, her fingers hesitating on the handle for a moment longer. Then she turned to me, her eyes stripped of their softness, now clouded, filled with uncertainty. I believe I require some distance," she murmured, her gaze averted from mine. Without pausing for my reply, she strode down the hallway and disappeared into the guest room. With a soft click, the door sealed itself behind her. I remained seated, the silence enveloping me once more, akin to an incoming tide. Yet, this time, an unsettling tension lingered in the air. It bore a weighty presence. And empty. The following morning, I stirred awake to the gentle sounds of activity, soft footsteps and the faint zip of a suitcase in the distance. I lingered in bed for a while, not rushing to rise. A fragment of my consciousness grasped the unfolding reality. I heard the soft sounds of drawers sliding in and out, accompanied by the gentle creak of a cabinet in the guest room. Silence reigns. There are no farewells. As I stepped into the kitchen, I found Lana poised at the door, her backpack casually draped over one shoulder. "Are you leaving?" I inquired, fully aware of the answer. She inclined her head in agreement. "Indeed, a last-minute class matter. Commences sooner than I anticipated." Her words flowed swiftly, as if she had meticulously rehearsed them before a mirror. I inclined my head with deliberation. "Very well. Wishing you a secure journey." "Thank you for everything," she murmured, her gaze darting in my direction, yet never quite meeting my eyes, and then she vanished into thin air. The door whispered shut behind her, a gentle sound that carried an unmistakable weight of finality. I lingered in the heart of the kitchen, my hands at a loss, caught in a moment of indecision. The silence enveloped me once more, but this time it carried a distinct quality. Not the serene variety. It was overflowing, excessively loud. I drifted into the living room, settling into my chair, the very same one that cradled me the night prior. I found my gaze drawn to the couch that sat opposite me. The blanket she had employed remained elegantly draped over the backrest, and in an instant, everything flooded back. Her hand rested gently upon mine. Her breath lingered close to my neck. The moment of stillness, the decision made, the sound of a knock. I concealed my visage within the cradle of my hands. What on earth have I done? What sort of man allows himself to falter in such a way, with his wife's niece? Yet, as I lingered in that moment, attempting to pile shame upon guilt, an inner voice stirred in defiance. A subtle corner of my heart longed for her presence, her voice, her touch, and that, perhaps, was the most disheartening aspect of it all. 3 days had passed. The house remained the same, yet an unsettling emptiness lingered within its walls. It was as if the very walls longed for her presence. That afternoon, the sky loomed low, burdened with clouds that lingered in indecision, caught between the urge to weep and the reluctance to release their burden. At the kitchen table, I cradled a mug of tea, my gaze fixed on the untamed yard outside, an expanse I had neglected since her departure. The stillness no longer embraced tranquility. It seemed incomplete. I grasped my phone, not with any specific intention in mind, merely a routine, a tangible presence to grasp, a task to occupy my hands as my thoughts drifted to places they ought not to go. In that moment, it ignited with brilliance. A fresh message awaits. By Lana. I stood still, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief. Time appeared to pause for a moment. The rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall elongated the silence, intertwining with the pulse of each heartbeat. I gently tapped the screen. Would you care to repeat that? Simply that.
No salutation.
There is no need for elaboration, only that phrase. The intricacies of that loaded question. Like a thread tugging at the final strand of fabric I was desperately attempting to keep intact. My thumb lingered above the keyboard, poised for action. I might compose a few words. Anything at all. Affirmative. Negative. What prompted your inquiry? Yet none of it was typed by me. I simply gazed in silence. As I lingered in that moment, phone clutched tightly, my heart racing, I caught sight of it. Those 3 tiny dots. She continued to type away. Uncertainty loomed as I awaited her words. I found myself uncertain of the words I sought to embrace. Yet, regardless of what it might have been, I sensed that this was far from the conclusion. Not at this moment. A soft hum filled the room. It wasn't real music, just the low whir of the fridge, the wind outside brushing against the window pane, and the soft clink of my spoon in the mug. The house was still, the kind of stillness that comes not from peace, but from after something almost happened. I sat back in my chair, phone resting face down on the table. I hadn't responded. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And yet, something inside me felt like it already had. I looked around the kitchen. The mug she used was still by the sink. Her sandal, just one, was tucked beneath the couch, half hidden. A shadow of her remained in every corner. And that was the thing about certain moments. They don't leave when the people do. The message stayed on my mind. The dots were gone now. She didn't send anything else. But she didn't have to. Some questions don't need answers. Some moments don't need closure. And some parts of us we don't ever fully get back once they're touched. There are moments that never quite end. Moments that echo long after the world moves on. They slip into your bones, your memory, and sit quietly in the corners of your life, whether you want them there or not. And maybe that's what this was. Not love, not lust, just a moment that asked a question my heart still isn't ready to answer. Have you ever had a moment you couldn't name, but could never forget? If this story stirred something inside you, subscribe to the channel and tell us below, what would you do if you were in Edward's shoes?